It's time for our last hour. And I think in a very interesting hour after this presentation we just had about the increase of the people parking in the cities, but what's going to happen and what is happening at the different cities. Let's have a conversation about that. So I don't know if Chris and Graham and Koen are already in. Good afternoon, Chris. How are you doing? Perhaps you can unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah, we can hear you.
perfectly. And there's Koen. Good to see you again, Koen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And there's Graham as well. The only thing is I hear myself in a repetition, so there might be, it's me or Steph, do you know what? Okay, next to me is Melissa. Melissa is also joining this panel discussion. She's my colleague, and great colleague, and I'm happy that she's joining me. Can you please introduce yourself, Chris, shortly and tell who you represent, and then we can start the open discussion.
Thank you. Yep. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Mitchell. I'm the car park and estate manager for Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield here at Stratford City. I've been with the company now for 5 years, and obviously been a very challenging last 6-7 months for us. But let's see what the future brings.
Good. Thank you so much. And Koen, yeah, it's good to see you again. Can you introduce yourself again?
Yes, my name is Koen Vansteenland. I am a mobility expert for the city of Bruges, Belgium, and I'm mostly responsible for the parking policy and everything to do with parking.
Great. And last but not least, Graham.
Hello. Yes, so Graham Titchener, I head up parking services for City Council. I'm also one of the elected members on the British Parking Association, representing local authorities throughout the UK.
Okay, thank you so much for introducing yourself. We spoke with two of you last time, and yeah, I think it's good to get a short update from you. What has happened so far? A lot have to do with the restrictions we all had probably locally. So yeah, who would like to start on that? And then I also would love to hear from Chris also what happened. Yeah, let's say in March, what you've seen in the figures, and also how you dealt with it, and yeah, where we are standing now. So if Koen can start with just giving us an update, then Graham, and then Chris, that would be great.
Okay. So like everybody knows, we had a global pandemic, and it affected us quite heavily, not only parking wise, but mostly economical and health wise, of course. Last time I was on, I was telling that we made a huge loss on the parking business, because nobody was allowed to get out of this, get out of their house and into the city. Everybody had to go, had to work from home. I managed to see a little bit of the presentation of Wouter, I think it was, just before, and we come to more or less the same conclusion, that the according to the parking figures, people are coming back to the city. The lockdown is over. We can see that it's more or less evening out. We had a big loss in March, April, May, but since especially July, August, it's more or less business as usual. But we do have something to say about that, because our prices have gone up the 1st of January. So if we compare it to the same period last year, we have more or less the same revenue, but about 1/3, 1/4 less tickets sold. We also see we have special tariffs for people who work in the city center, and that's more or less the same. But the normal tickets for people who visit the city center, who come shopping, the tourists, those are still not on their normal level. And we in Bruges, we do see that less and less people are using the parking machines. So they're not as inclined to use cash. So we can see a huge rise in app and SMS parking. So texts and an app. So digital parking is even more on the rise. I think that's a big deal of mostly because of current pandemic.
Okay, thank you so much, Koen. Graham, can you give us an update of what happened so far since we last spoke?
Yeah, I'm trying not to copy what Koen just said, basically, because that's very similar, I guess, what we've had probably across the world, really, the Western world anyway. The term drop off a cliff comes to mind whenever since the pandemic came in and lockdown came in across the world, essentially. The figures just dropped markedly. So I think where we are, excluding areas like, let's say, London, for example, and Paris, where you have big municipalities, where the trends tend to be a lot different compared to the rest of the countries. So in York, so one of the better places to live in the country, certainly in the top 5 places to visit, we're heavily reliant on the tourism economy. York is one of these places where it kind of fluctuates like this, rather up and down quite markedly, whether it's housing pricing or transport, whatever it may be. But we certainly found that from June, July, and certainly August, we've, like you were saying, we're pretty much back to normal, I have to say. Footfall is very high, despite having various social distancing measures in around the city centre. The key focus, I think, has been for us all, certainly the local politicians, is how we're looking at the local economic recovery side of things. So taking on board what the UK government have been saying about don't use public transport, but then the various other initiatives to encourage walking, cycling, so such that modal shift to those kind of measures, and obviously saying that, yeah, also jump in the car as well, which is a real shift what the UK government normally says. So I've seen parking figures go through the roof around the city centre. We're at usually 100% capacity. There is no trends anymore, so we have your rush hours of, let's say, 8 until 9, and then let's say 3:30 till 5 or 6. It's really about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The weekends are quite busy with footfall, but it's been around Tuesdays. Go figure. So we're in this kind of new world now where there isn't any trends to base anything on. One initiative we have is we've shut down the city centre and increased what we call the foot street hours up until 8 o'clock in the evening. That usually finishes at 5:30. That should allow people out, including the badge holders. So we've had to put various initiatives in place, like a shuttle taxi service in one of our car parks. We've increased the disabled bays, looking at putting free parking initiatives, which was a political decision, so I certainly don't agree with. And certainly when we look at the figures, it is more around people still using mainly card, some cash, and then some of the digital payment solutions as well, where the free parking initiative that we've had has been very low indeed. So they're basically looking at maybe 500 or so transactions in a week, but 20,000 or so that we've had across the board. So York is somewhat bucking the trend nationally. The public transport usage, the car park usage as well, about between 5 and 10% above what the national average is around here. And because we're now all seemingly going to this kind of second wave, what the UK government hasn't been saying is staying away from public transport. And that has quite an interesting effect. We've seen bus passengers still remain relatively high compared to what we thought it would be. So it's interesting to see the communication come from our national governments and how that really affects the public mood and how that's actually influencing people's behaviour. We had very recently, last week, as far as the UK is concerned, at least as far as England is concerned, is encouraging people back into working from home. I can see I've never really left home really, but I've been working here for the last few months. So we have that ongoing new world kind of trend where we're going to see a lot more people still staying at home, less commuting going on, and then these differences in the rush hours and the peak times, including footfalls as well, being more kind of early week into maybe the Saturday peak side of things as well. So there's been a lot of change going on, but really focusing on economic recovery, which is the key things that we've been trying to do.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Yeah, Chris, it's of course very interesting to hear from Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield. How you experienced everything and how you dealt with the lack of people shopping and also the lack of people parking at your shopping mall. So can you please give it away and just start from the whole beginning when COVID-19 started and how you reacted on it.
Absolutely. Well, just like the previous two contributions, we literally fell off a cliff on Monday, the 23rd of March, when the government put the national lockdown in place. Our volumes went from we'd had a very healthy first 10, 11 weeks of the year, and then literally overnight, I think that Tuesday, the 24th, we parked less than 100 cars across 3 car parks with total capacity of 5,000. So a massive impact on us straight away. The first thing we did was we looked at our pricing. We still had 5 tenants who remained open throughout the lockdown. So we had Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's food halls. We also had Boots, the chemist, a pharmacist, and a couple of other tenants who are qualified to keep open, as well as some banks as well. So the first thing we did to take the pressure off the local public transport was to offer free parking to all of the staff, and we also reached out to all the key workers in the area, particularly in the NHS and the emergency services, to make sure that they were offered free parking. And that's really how it stayed, sort of a few hundred cars a day. We reacted quite quickly, and we actually used this as an opportunity to bring forward some of the maintenance work and capital projects that we had planned for later this year. So we actually see a bit of an opportunity with the car parks being closed, or certainly being much less use. So we've got 3 car parks here at Stratford, and one of which we closed down entirely, which allowed us to undertake the first deep clean we've been able to undertake for 5 years. We've used the opportunity to do some remarking of the lines. We've installed some new innovations as well. And again, the same in our other car parks. We've been able to bring forward some of the PPM regimes. So, we did see some opportunity here, but obviously it's very difficult. And that's how it really remained until the 15th of June, when the government gave retail the okay to open. And we weren't really sure what we were going to expect and what we were going to see from day one. And it's fair to say that initially it was a bit of a slow take up over the first 7 to 10 days. There was clearly, in terms of a modal shift towards people coming by bicycle and people coming on foot, and some exit surveys we undertook identified that there was a shift towards more local shoppers visiting Westfield at Stratford, but those people were undertaking more regular trips. So whilst our footfall figures sort of climbed reasonably quickly over the first couple of weeks, we did expect the car park modal share to be higher than it was. But we did go in with a £5 flat rate tariff to try and, again, protect the public transport. We've got a number of construction sites around the shopping centre to ensure that those people who need to travel in the rush hour could come in and park competitively. So we supported those people through that. And then really by the beginning of July, we got back to about 70% of the volumes that we'd seen pre-COVID, and it sort of plateaued at that point until the Eat Out to Help Out scheme started in early August. And Monday to Wednesdays, we actually hit some of our volume numbers were up like for like on the same days last year. So that really helped drive, excuse the pun, both footfall and car park volumes, and in turn the revenue. However, as a business, we were keen to return to business as usual, so we took the decision at the beginning of September, once Eat Out to Help Out had finished, that we would revert back to our standard pricing tariffs, so the pre-COVID pricing. And that naturally, with any price change, has seen a slight drop off in volumes. But what we're really missing here at Stratford, there are 2 markets that we have just not seen return to us at all. One of the offices, we've got about 13,000 office workers within a kilometre of the centre of the shopping centre. We're part of the Olympic part, the legacy and the development post the 2012 Olympics here at Stratford. So with all the office developments around us, there's only about 10% of the office workers have returned. We used to see about 1,000 cars a day, so we're now only seeing about 100 cars a day from that market. And the other thing is, of course, one of our neighbours is the London Stadium, with the lead tenant of West Ham United and British Athletics. And of course, there hasn't been an attended event at the stadium since early March now. And for every event, and there's about 50 events at the stadium every year, we see about 1,500 cars come and park in the shopping centre to both use the services and the facilities within the centre, as well as to then go over to the Olympic Park and attend the event in the stadium. So, we're seeing those numbers that we just haven't replicated. And then operationally, one decision we did make very early on was that we were going to go cashless. So we have now, we no longer take cash here in the centre at the car park. We thought this would be quite a challenging journey, particularly given that our cash volumes are about 20–22% of transaction totals. But actually, we found that that was a very smooth transition and had a number of benefits for us. And we're also moving more and more people towards our smart parking platform, which is our frictionless parking service. So whilst it's fair to say that the last couple of months or last 6 months have been very challenging, very tough, we have used it as positively as we can do, see some opportunities. But obviously, we've now started to remodel and reforecast our revenue and volumes for next year. And it's fair to say that as a business, we don't expect, on a volume point of view, to be back to normal until at least the second quarter next year, if not a little bit later.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as you all know, there has been a real rise in the people buying in the web shops online. So the retail online did increase a lot, and it did affect, of course, also people shopping in the city center. So how do you deal with it, and how do you cope with this also in the future? We have. Sorry?
Well, in terms of for Westfield, is that Jorrit? Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what we're doing at the moment is we've very recently been able to reopen a number of our leisure tenants. So we've got casinos, which will hopefully be opening soon. We've got cinemas, hotels. So we very much trying to get the message out there to the public through our marketing channels, through our advertising about it's not just the shopping like that's an integral part of what we do. We've got over 80 places here at Stratford for people to eat and drink. We've got a huge leisure offering as well. So it's really about our messaging going out there that Westfield Stratford City has got something for everybody, and it's also working in with some of our tenants. We've done some great work with people like John Lewis and Marks and Spencer's, looking at how we can support their click and collect services as well. So actually trying to embrace some of the opportunities that the shift towards the online business presents. So it's not all doom and gloom from that front, but we are seeing that downturn.
Okay.
John, I'll just add into that. I think at what we're seeing in town and city centres, basically, we're seeing a massive increase in footfall. I mean, certainly pre-COVID levels, say the least. I guess you could see it almost with like a rubber band effect, really, where people have been locked away for so long, desperate to get out and desperate to find something to do. So in some ways, again, we're in this whole new world now, no trends in there. So we're seeing actually retailers reporting back these through our BID, Business Improvement District, which York has. The retail levels actually, increasing quite markedly. Actually, how long that will stay for, who knows? I mean, certainly internet retail we're seeing go through the roof, obviously, but we are seeing that high level of footfall coming to city centres now. So who knows?
If I could just come back to one of the points that Chris was making about office workers not coming back into the city. Maybe Koen and Graham, you could share with us how this has affected your cities. I mean, Bruges, has been sort of work from home has been the advice the whole time. But certainly in the UK, there was a big push to get people back to work for, I think, 21 days, which has now changed again. So maybe you could give us some insight into how the return or not return of city workers has affected your city.
Thank you.
You want to kick off, Graham, perhaps?
Yeah, no, I can do that. Yeah, is there anything from a congestion point of view and the knock-on effects around that, such as environmental considerations and capacity issues? It's actually been very good, really, to an extent. We are now approaching this kind of second wave across the UK, the other parts of the world, here in around the Yorkshire and Humberside area. We have Leeds, which is very close to York, and that's where we have a lot of people going out to Leeds to work, people actually living in York. So we were seeing that the patronage on trains and buses markedly drop. And I don't think there was that bigger drive once the UK government started to say, right, start going back into work. I think people are still very hesitant, employers still very hesitant about bringing people back in. We did have some, obviously, especially small and medium enterprises went back in, but certainly we haven't had the massive rush as we thought we might do, and now we're in this game again of having to be work back from home, contrary to what the UK advice is telling us, but we've certainly seen a market drop, let's say, in congestion around that. So I guess that's a positive to an extent, but obviously not for retail, not for those going out for lunch breaks. So we are seeing probably a negative impact certainly on the retail side of things, which Chris could allude to.
And Koen, what's it been like in Bruges?
For us, it's slightly different. Like I said before, we have a special tariff for employees who work in the city center. So not only people who work for the city of Bruges, but for everybody who has his workplace in the city center. And we see that the level of those tickets that are being bought are more or less the same as last year, July, most of the same as last year in August. So it's more or less at the same level again. And I think it has a lot to do. We have a lot of schools in the city center. We also have a lot of shops, a lot of restaurants. Those people can't work from home, so they have to come back home. They have to come back to work. Outside of the city center, we have more offices. And there we will see that it's not the same level as before, but in the city center, we see that most people who cannot stay at home for work come back, and that also has an effect on the economy, of course, because they need to have lunch somewhere or they need to buy something. So that's a good thing. Also, the schools reopened, and at the moment the schools are we work with different color codes. They're on code yellow, which is the second softest color code. So a lot of the children go back to school, especially the high school children. So that is has a really good effect because they go and buy sandwiches, pastas, lunch, everything. So that's I think it's a bit different for us in the city center then.
Great, thank you. Chris, I know when we spoke briefly before, you mentioned that you'd implemented cashless parking. So can you tell us a bit about what you did for people who couldn't pay via this mode?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing to say is we were very keen to make sure we didn't penalise anybody who didn't have means to pay. We would certainly never instigate penalties or fines for people who couldn't afford to pay or didn't have the means to pay. So we put a system in whereby if somebody goes to the payment machine, they're unable to pay by any means other than cash. We take their details and we put a flag on their registration plate. And what this basically means is the next time they visit the shopping centre, when they arrive at the entry barriers, the ANPR will flag up to our control room and we'll basically enter into dialogue with the customer and we'll take the charge from them on their next visit. So it's very much a warm, a softer message that we want to give people, even though they don't have any means to pay other than cash on them. They're still very welcome to come and park with us. We'll make sure that we can facilitate their payment on their next visit. So very keen not to penalise anybody who couldn't pay. But obviously there are lots of different benefits to us as a centre and a car park operator around moving to that cashless system.
Great, thank you. We've just had a question actually in from the audience, which is, how important has touchless technology or access payment become in your operations? Is it now a must that you're focusing on to be implemented? So I guess that's an open question to everybody. So take it away.
Well, if I could just start, obviously from Westwood, we have our frictionless parking product, it's smart parking. We had an aim that by the end of this year, 25% of all transactions will be processed through that product. We're now into the low 30s. As more and more people, when the government talks about the risks and the vectors of infection through COVID, cash is one, interacting with any equipment is another. So we've really been able to sell the smart parking as it's all about saving time rather than saving money, and it's a value-add service. So for us, we've seen a real jump in the percentage participation of smart parkers across our parking platforms.
Great. And Graham, I know that when we spoke previously, you said that you'd actually received a grant for some smart city approaches at that point. So does that include barrierless and contactless options? Is that something that you've prioritized now?
Yeah, so that was mainly around the modal shift we're seeing towards cycling and the walking side of things. recently won a grant for e-scooters. So that's something that we're implementing. There's about a handful of cities across the UK that's now progressing with a trial of sorts, a bit like the bike rental schemes that we see across some parts of the UK and certainly across Europe. So we're actually implementing the e-scooter trials, let's say, alongside our cycle parking, and that'll be run by a company. So that's going to be taken forward there. I think, as Warsaw was saying in the last presentation, where we're seeing card payments go through the roof, essentially. We think that's probably down to a combination of people not wanting to touch money, maybe COVID virus and that kind of stuff that's on it as well. But yeah, we are taking forward a new scheme around pay and exit, and a lot of people have got that already. But for York, that's something that's fairly new. So we're just going to be implementing that, hopefully, fingers crossed, later next month. And then, similar to Chris, will be putting in a cashless system where we won't be accepting cash at all in one of our car parks. That's something just to help our politicians realise that the benefits around going cashless and all that means, and then including various smart systems as well, using NPR technology and having accounts online. So again, as Chris like said before, I think it's rather than the cost and the tariffs, it's actually the ease of getting in and then going off, do your shopping and business, and then come back again. So that's something we're going to be implementing next month. And then depending how those two systems roll out, then we'll have to roll out across the rest of the city.
Thank you. And Koen, you actually told us previously that you didn't think that Bruges had the infrastructure for a shift from public transport use to private car use. We think, and we've seen that shift has actually happened anyway. So how are you dealing with that in Bruges?
Badly, I would say. I would say we're the third biggest city in Flanders, the Flemish part of Belgium. But the thing is, if we have 5 cars that are waiting for a red light, we call it a traffic jam. So now we might have 7 cars waiting for a light. So it's a bit of combination. We have, especially in the outside of the city, so the sub-municipalities, we have less people coming to work. But in the city center, there are more people coming to work by car. So it evens a little bit up, I would say. We don't have a lot of let's say bad things at the moment because of the shift to private cars. We might think but we need to check our details and our numbers. That a lot of people are coming by bike now as well instead of cars. We are quite a bike-friendly city. Every 3 months we do we call it a cordon. Every in and out of the city we count. So we put some counting. I call it. We put some counters on the streets, and we count every car, every bike. And I have the numbers here from August and September. On average, we have 48,000 cars coming in and out the city, and 45,000 bikes.
Yeah.
So we're quite happy with that. It's almost 50-50. And in the cars, there are also buses and also public transport there as well. So I think we have quite a lot of cyclists, which we're really happy about.
Can you share on that number also, for example, another month, let's say the month of April?
We only do these countings 4 times a year.
Okay.
We should have them from May, but I have to look them up. I can look that up for you, but I'll have to come back in about 5 minutes with those numbers. But I can look that up if you want.
Yeah, because I think it would be interesting to see a shift there, as you explained that you have more cyclists coming to the city, so might be interesting to see there as well. And yeah, how did you deal with or what if there are coming new restrictions along? So as you probably have heard tonight, we will have some new restrictions coming along in the Netherlands. What I heard now is that it will be 3 weeks. You need to work from home again, so there's no question if yes or no. So that also means that there will be less traffic coming to the cities and out of cities. So how will you deal in the future with new restrictions or really strict restrictions coming along by what you have learned from the past so far? Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, we clearly learned a lot of lessons from the initial lockdown. I think, you know, the way the government is talking here in the UK, I think that we could be facing a socially distanced lockdown, which will see the loss of the food and beverage industry, the pubs, bars, restaurants. I do think here in the UK that the shops will continue to trade. And again, what we will just look at the volumes and just match demand with supply. We'll look at which of our car parks we need to keep open. Again, what opportunities does that give us for any capital projects we want to be delivering? We're looking at our bay monitoring systems at the moment, where so there are some projects we can maybe execute. But again, it's really about making sure that we can support our retailers first and foremost, making sure that their staff can get to and from the shopping centre safely, because at the end of the day, without the tenant staff here, we don't have any shops to open to serve our customers. So I'm hoping that a second lockdown wouldn't necessarily be a full lockdown and see everything closed again, but maybe here in the UK it'd be more reflective of the food and beverage industry. That will still have a significant impact on our volumes, but again, I think we need to wait and see what happens when that comes along. But it's almost something that we'll monitor and review on a daily basis, and just make sure that we've got the facilities and resources to meet demand as and when they're needed.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that the full lockdown, we've learned from that as well here in the Netherlands and in other countries, that's been real fears for a lot of people. So the shops and the restaurants will stay open, but less people will be allowed, and there will be more social distancing indeed. So and that will also have the effect on the total people to come to the cities and park the cars, of course. So Graham, what's your idea on that?
I think certainly not waiting too long. I mean, I think that a lot of local authorities waited a little bit too long after lockdown officially came to an end. Like, well, what should we do now? How do we get people back in? And those questions lasted about 2 or 3 weeks, let's say roughly. So I think the measures that all local authorities have got in place now to encourage people back into the centre will carry on with those. I think very mindful that people's wallets and purses will be hurting quite a lot. So when looking at parking charges, let's say coach operators, for example, every coach now, where they had a normal party of, let's say, 52 on a coach, that now doubles the outgoing because they need 2 coaches for that number of people. So what we're doing in York, for example, is we charge a first hour tariff rate, first hour tariff rate is £6.70, for example. So that is now our daily rate in there. So they can come park as long as they want per day, obviously, based on those rates. So I think a lot of it will be just carry on what we're doing already, keeping things open as much as possible, being inclusive, I guess, as much as possible, and just really just trying to react the way we can do it, because I don't think, again, there's that little trend in there where we can actually properly plan ahead. This second wave that we're all coming into now, so it's in the media, it shouldn't be, hopefully won't be as severe as last time. I think the fact that we've got more localised lockdowns now as opposed to regional or even national lockdowns helps an awful lot. So let's say in Wales, for example, most of the southern and middle of Wales is pretty much locked down, but not the northern part. Whereas, I guess, reacting, when we were back in February and March time, they say, right, let's shut the whole of Wales down, shut the whole of the country down. So seemingly politicians and national governments aren't that way minded now, which is a good thing. It's more around localised lockdowns to an extent, or at least localised restrictions, whatever that means. But yeah, essentially, I think keeping consistency going by keeping things open as best as possible, as safely as possible as well. But at the same point, just keep an eye on the charges and tariffs that we're doing, including whether it's business rates or even council tax, for that matter, as well.
Yeah, thank you. Koen, what also would be interesting, did you also have analysis of the people who came to Bruges and especially during the holiday season? Because what we have seen here in Maastricht, which is also a popular city to go through from a tourism tourism reason, did you also see different people coming to the city, or do you have an idea that if you looked at who was coming to the city by car or by public transport, do you have any idea about it?
Not that it's let's say based on any numbers or any data, but the feeling we have is that we, as a touristy city, we have a lot of people who come by plane, people from the Americas, South America, China as well. So we're not having those people anymore. We have a lot of our neighboring countries, so French, Dutch, German, English, but not as much as before, since the quarantine rule that they have. But a lot of tourists from our country, from different cities of Belgium, from the Walloon part, from the French part, from Brussels, who come to rediscover the other Belgian cities, the other Flemish cities, because they're not allowed, or now we are allowed. I think since last week we're allowed back on planes, even to red zones. But before that, we're not allowed to travel quite far. So we have a lot of internal tourists.
That's also what we've seen here in Maastricht. We've seen way more people come from the Netherlands visiting during the summer season the city, and also from the Belgium and the other and Germany, of course, and that also resulted in the fact that if you look at the retail numbers, the retailers were way more happy, and also the restaurants and pubs were really happy with the results. They really increased the numbers in comparison to last year. So I don't know if you've experienced the same, Chris.
Well, we've seen, I think it's fair to say, historically, we don't have a huge international tourist demographic that comes to Stratford. We rely quite a lot on domestic tourists. And certainly throughout June and July, those numbers were very slow to return. Anecdotally, looking at August, you could see a real step up in the return of the domestic tourists from further afield. But we did see a real shift initially to a more local, more regular customer. The biggest challenge that we've got from the biggest draw we've got in the area for us in terms of domestic tourism, as well as the shopping centre, we've got the O2 in Greenwich, we've got the XL in Docklands, and we've got the London Stadium next door. And we used to find that people make multi-purpose trips. They would come and maybe stay at one of the hotels on site here at Westfield. They'd park in our car park, and then they would use the great transport infrastructure we've got going out of Stratford Station to visit one of those other destinations. That's the domestic tourists we just haven't seen this summer. So we've definitely seen a drop off. It has recovered. It's plateaued again into September. But once we get out the other side, we do hope that market will recover quite quickly, and certainly will be more robust, we feel, than the international tourist market.
Yeah. And
what your perspective as well, I was going to say that best way that we can look at it probably around the hotel occupancy. So I mean, during the July and August period, especially, we had about 85% hotel occupancy being taken up. That's now dropped down to below 60. I guess not surprising, the summer holidays that have finished. So, and I would say that's probably more around national tourism than plus international tourism to an extent as well. But we have seen figures go up, but nothing compared to 2019.
Okay. Koen, did you find the number so far for May?
Yes, I'm also doing a check for March already. Yeah, I'm looking if I was unmuted or not. In May, June, we had on average 30,879 cars coming in. So that's almost 2/3 of in August. But we did have 49,000 cyclists. So we had loads more cyclists in that period. That's also, we were still in lockdown light, as you call it. Maybe in June we still had all the restaurants have been open, I think, since the 8th of June. So before that, it didn't have a lot of bars and restaurants open any. And we have, I think, over 2,000 restaurants and bars in our city center. So that is, on the top of my head, one of the explanations. I think we have so many cars less than in August.
Okay. Chris, from the point of view from cyclists, I know that you also talked about that. Do you also see that increase, and do you also expect more increase in cyclists coming to the shopping malls?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the modal split, normally cyclists would be about 1% of visits to the shopping centre will be made by cyclists. From the very first exit surveys we looked at, that's gone up to 5%. We also do surveys of our parking facilities on a monthly basis. Pre-COVID, they would sit at about 45–50% occupied. During COVID and since, they've gone up into the 80%. We've also added 25% more cycle parking facilities around the estate. So one of the first things we did during lockdown was to use some of our event space that wasn't going to be able to be used for events and activations during lockdown and afterwards. We put some temporary cycle parking spaces into those areas, and that's proved very, very popular and has allowed us to facilitate and enable that demand.
Are there any alternative modes you've seen also increasing?
The other one that we've really seen increase, we actually, I will be honest with you, we expect to see car use increase significantly because if you're in the car on your own, you're safe, you're not going to interact with anybody else. And whilst the motor share of cars gone from about 10 to 12%, so it's gone up, but not by a huge amount. Walking is the one other that's gone from 10% to nearly 20%. So again, that reflects that shift to a much more local customer visiting the shopping centre on a more regular basis. So certainly cycling and walking are the two that we've seen. Obviously our stats only go up and include August, but we'll be very interested to see how that translates into September when those numbers are available as well. But walking and cycling are the two modes that we've seen the greatest growth in.
Okay, Graham, you also experience an increase in alternative modes. So yeah, alternative depends from what side you look at it. Do you see a shift?
We have seen a marginal shift, and certainly more into cars. York's probably got number 3, number 4 in the UK for cycling levels, so we're pretty good. We're on average about 20-ish% of people actually cycling in each day into York. I think because congestion can be quite high sometimes, we're seeing quite a move back into bus usage as well, which is interesting. So I would say rather than a full modal shift, as it were, from walking and cycling, it's been fairly level for York. I think as far as concerned, we're probably not best to compare with, I guess, but look at other towns and cities maybe don't have fully high cycling levels. I think we'll probably see, again, depending on where the origin destination is, how far you live away from where it is you want to go to, and the ease to get there with the network and the facilities to park up your bike or walk, whatever it may be, then you'll see a general increase and shift. One of the number of initiatives that we're doing with what the UK government are doing is with the British Parking Association around Park Active, where we're looking for people that live out of town to drive into, let's say, the outside car parks or park and ride sites that we have, the shuttle bus service that come into city centres. Park your car up there and then essentially cycle or walk the rest of the way in, depending on the government advice at the time about using or rather not using public transport. So we are, we're seeing a moderate increase in cycling, I would say. I think across the board, we probably are seeing that greater shift, as Chris and John were saying there, to be more in the modes of transport. And I think also partly as well, just typical human behaviour, it's been locked away for so long. Let's say, yes, we have been out doing exercise. When there's, I guess, a nicer modal shift, looking outside today, not bad weather either, people are encouraged to get out and walk more, get some fresh air, as opposed to being stuck in the bus or stuck in the car really as well. So I think there's a number of different reasons for seeing a modal shift, but I think we have seen a shift across the board.
Okay. Melissa, do you have some fresher questions for these gentlemen?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it's a bit all doom and gloom at the moment. So have any of the measures that you've put in place in the last 6 months actually added value to your operation? Koen, do you want to kick us off, perhaps?
Difficult question. I think
it's a bit of a general.
It's a bit early to see which measures have helped, which haven't helped, because we also have not only for our department but a lot of different departments. They did different kinds of measures. So I think we have to analyze it a bit more what we did and what the reaction and the value was from that. So I don't think I can give a straight answer on this to this question.
No problem. And Chris, do you have anything that you've put in place that you think's added value?
Certainly, going cashless has reduced our cost base quite significantly. A couple of costs, or three separate costs associated with that. First is obviously the cost of the cash collections, which with over 40 pay machines across our estate was not an insignificant saving. We've also then got the staffing. For us, staff are our point of difference, and we're very proud of the teams we've got here. But what it does mean is that we've been able to release them away from doing the cash collections to focus in other areas, mainly focus on the customer, which is obviously a great news story. And then third, we are just starting now to be approached by our local businesses who are now starting to think about a return to the office. Now, initially they were talking about returning to the office in October, they're now talking about January, but they are approaching us wanting to block book parking spaces so they can protect their staff against having to travel on London Underground and the public transport network. So whilst that's not actually added any value yet, that looks like that will become an opportunity for us in the first quarter of next year.
And Graham, do you have anything to add, please?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we've done probably was the physical and timely increase of the foot streets of the core city centre being locked for traffic. But actually what we're doing with not only extending that to cover the wider periphery of the city centre, but actually have staffed closures so people can't put all ads up and try and get in the city centre, and that includes blue badges as well. So having that completely traffic-free area, except for emergency services and that kind of stuff, has been a real benefit to businesses that certainly the likes of Business Improvement District and retailers, retail forums and that kind of stuff. He said that's been a real added value hit for them in the sense of trying to increase the footfall. And then anything else we've got on the periphery of that, such as reduced parking tariffs, shuttle services that I mentioned before, and other encouragements to get people in the city centre, I think has certainly worked. But that creating that safe space for people with appropriate signage, with appropriate measures in place, with what we call street rangers that go around just to help people uniform presence, I think it has really worked.
Great, thank you. One of the questions that we actually asked our members recently was, do you think the preference for contactless solutions signals the end of the human touch? It might be quite interesting to get your point of view on that. I can see you nodding, Chris. Do you want to kick us off with this?
Yeah, well, I might have been nodding, but my view is the opposite. I mean, I'm very passionate. We've got a fantastic team who work in the car park here in Stratford, and what I actually see the future being is actually that their roles evolving. I don't think here at Stratford we would ever say that we'd want to lose the human touch, because that's one of the points of difference that we can offer in terms of the different services that the car park teams on the ground can offer. And actually we're in the process now of splitting our car park team into two sections. One are going to be a proactive team whose job it is to be out there, engage with customers, whether it's helping them use the technology we've got, the Find My Car technology, the bay guidance, and then the other side will be a reactive team, and their role will be very much to be the first port of call for any issues with any of the equipment that we have got around the car park estate. So I would feel very passionate about this would not be the end of the human touch, but will actually allow us to evolve the way the teams work on the ground and actually use that to become a benefit for us.
Great, thank you. Do you see the same sort of evolution, Graham, in York, as what Chris mentioned?
I don't think it's the end of the human touch. I think we'll certainly see a reduction. I think people are kind of very keen to stay away from surfaces and that kind of thing. I think as we progress with a more technological approach, like I think we're all doing now, that invariably means there's less human interaction from parking services teams or any other kind of offices out there. And in some ways, that's quite a good shift. So where we're putting all this tech into the off-street locations, car parks, for example, in there, that then means that what we have in the civil enforcement officers then go out into the residency areas and actually start doing the patrols around there. And that is a high value thing that residents and the businesses do like to see. They like to see the people walking around there, not necessarily in the car parks. And technology means we can have that shift away from that. And certainly technology improves around having contactless payment systems and that kind of stuff as well. I think we'll certainly see a reduction, probably a natural reduction in human touches that we've described. I don't think we'll say completely on.
Okay, and Koen, do you have anything to add on this question?
No.
Okay.
Gentlemen, is there anything you would like to, because we're almost rounding up, is there anything you would like to share with the audience which might be of interest if we are talking about this topic, and also what you've learned so far, what you definitely would recommend, and also, yeah, perhaps what you would like to share with each other sitting in this room? Chris, you can start if you want.
I think the one thing that I've learned, and I think Graham might have actually touched on it earlier, and one thing we've learned is that we can no longer forecast, and we have lost the traditional pattern of the day. So trying to second guess what volumes are going to be like on any given day. I'm renowned as being a bit of a geek in the office here in Stratford, and I took great pride in being able to roughly guesstimate what volumes would be on any given day, but that ability is completely gone now. So we don't see the traditional rush hour anymore. We're seeing Thursdays are becoming the new Friday. Saturday and Sunday are now much more aligned with each other, whereas in the past Saturday would have a higher spike. So I think my general observation is we're almost, we take pride in being proactive in our parking approach and actually in our shopping centre approach here at Stratford. But one of the things that we've learned to do is to become a lot more reactive and react very quickly to those very sharp but very rapid changes in demand and supply. And that's one thing that's probably caught us by surprise, if I'm being honest with you.
Okay. Koen?
The thing that amazed me most on the whole pandemic is the fact that when it started, in between brackets, in March, everybody was telling we need to live differently and we need to change our way of life. But according to the numbers we see in the city of Bruges, life has already changed a bit, but most of the people just continue living like before. It might have, like Chris said, it might see some little differences or some differences from before, but most of the people just continue doing their own things like they did before. And I think even a pandemic like this is really difficult to change our behavior. And I think we need much more than a pandemic to change our behavior.
That's a good thing. I totally agree on that, Koen. Graham, last but not least.
That's a bit of what Chris and Koen were saying there. Very much so. There is no trends anymore to speak of. We can't really forecast it, but I guess it's being proactive about it and looking, I guess, not only professionally but personally as well. What can we do to make a change? At the moment, we're going through this huge state of flux. So we are looking to change behaviours, that kind of stuff. That behaviours are already being changed for us to make sense. It's how we can actually capture that and mould that for the benefit of the greater good. So more electric vehicle charging points, for example, in and around the cities that we have in there. Looking at how the tariffs, the bus tariffs, the train tariffs, can be aligned better to encourage that greater modal shift. And at the same point, I think looking around, there's now embracing technology. And I was saying the other day, another conference I was talking about, where actually it's spending to save to an extent. So spending more on technology means you're actually saving a lot less and moving the resources you have, human resources you have, into other areas that maybe do require that a lot more. So I think it's almost just preparing for the unpreparable, really, as much as we can.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. We need to round up. This was our 5th edition of the Park Network Virtual Conference. We're now going to prepare ourselves for 2 months to launch our virtual airport parking network event, which will take place end of November. I hope we can do another update, let's say in 6 months from now, because I think to do this every 3 months, that will not make a big difference. But hopefully in 6 months' time, we have some more positive news, and we are not talking about any future restrictions or lockdowns or whatever, but we talk about for this whole situation. Thank you so much again for joining us today, and I wish you a pleasant rest of the day or evening, and hope to see you soon again. Then I'm asking Steph to join the room again, and then we can round up today. So Steph, where are you? Oh, there he is, the host of the event. And Melissa just left as well. Melissa, thank you so much for being my co-host in this panel discussion. Steph, what was your experience so far?
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you as well. Thank you to all the panelists. I've been listening in the background, very interesting. So thanks for joining. What I think about the event is I'm happy that we live in this day and age and that we are able to do this. I mean, there was a time where we would have never been able to communicate in this way, to keep on going, and so I think there are also some advantages we should not forget, and let's hope things will be better ASAP. And there's only one way we can do that, and that is together. So we have some bright people in this room that can help the normal civilians of some cities do that, and the visitors of shopping malls. So I'm happy that we can learn from you guys. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much again, and then look forward to the next edition. And I would
Definitely.
say goodbye. See you soon again.
Yes. So
Okay, guys.
everybody who joined today, thanks so much for being here again, and we'll keep you posted on the next date and the next panel discussion, and hope to see you there. Everybody, thanks so much for supporting us, and we'll keep supporting you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Okay.